English version. Welcome to this channel. You are in floor D, so you are automatic new house. I wish you learning and extraordinary experiences. Article recorded on April 21, 2023 by Laban Baylor for educational sharing on Alpha Omega Creativa. Aerial Body Acrobatics of Life. Julia Franca is CMA, Certified Movement Analyst, Circus Performer, Dancer Contemporary and Educator of the Movement. She is postgraduate in Laban/Bartenieff System by Limericks, Laban/Bartenieff Institute of Movement Studies, New York City/USA, and by the faculty D. Dong Ka Angel Vianna. 2011 graduated in contemporary dance from the same university. 2007 and graduated from the National Circus School, Funna-RJE. 2010. She passed the Cirque du Soleil audition 2009 and won several awards, such as first place at the Language Exchange Festival 2009, the Tapias Festival 2008, Feminine Revelation Malabar-RJ 2008, among others. Over the past 10 years, she has been applying different aspects of the LMA Laban/Bartenieff movement analysis to a unique dance acrobatic style, combining theoretical and practical research into an expansive possibility of performance creations and specific teaching methodology/learning between choreography, dance theater, circus, video dance, and collaborations interdisciplinary. ILINX Magazine. Aerial Body Acrobatics of Life. Julia Coelho Franca de Mamari, postgraduate in Contemporary Studies of Arts, UFF. Summary. This article is the summary of the final work of postgraduate Latu-Sensu in Laban/Bartenieff System faculty Angel Vianna-RJ, in which we present the analysis of an experience methodology for aerial acrobatics, held in Mexico City, Mex in 2012, which featured meetings with the Laban/Bartenieff in order to seek training that could be used of the technical part of the acrobatics and, at the same time, take into account the person who practices it, its corporeality and originality. Keywords: aerial dance, originality, Sitema, Laban/Bartenieff. In this article, we will analyze methodological experience for aerial acrobatics, which presents meetings with the Laban/Bartenieff system, in order to seek a training in which the technical part of the acrobatics can be used and, at the same time, take into account the person who practices it. By identifying which of the relationships an aerial body has that are different and which are similar to the body that is on the ground, adaptive solutions appear and demonstrate that, from the fundamental exercises of Bartenieff Fundamentalism Bartenieff and Lewis, 1980, and its principles, and some references from the effort category to a transverse line of understanding of aerial acrobatics can be traced, noting real solutions from this meeting. For the deepening of the study, an aerial acrobatics course was structured from the Laban/Bartenieff system and its main aspects of practice and analysis of the body and the movement. Held in Mexico City, on Circo de Ments canvas, the course had 2 months long, with 3 hours per class, totaling 42 hours. The entire class had 6 members, all ages between 20 and 25 years old. Whereas the Laban/Bartenieff system formulates a complex system of experimentation, observation and analysis of movement, The course sought to emphasize the categories body 3 and effort. This choice was due to the duration and, mainly, taking into account that the focus of the course would be linked to the respective themes, since their complexity would reach others and the categories form and space, even if subjectively. In the first part of the course, emphasis was placed on the body category, developed by Bartenieff 1900–1981 student of Rudolf von Laban, dancer, physiotherapist and movement therapist, who followed up on her experiences with Laban, creating the which today is called Bartenieff fundamentalism. From the perspective of a body that balances within a dynamic framework of innumerable directional forces that relate to the axis of pride posture cf. Miranda, 2008. The Basic 6 Bartenieff and Lewis, 1980. Appendix B were developed in the first moment of the class, when the body was generally more available and open to using mobilities than apparently they were small, however, which would come to be indispensable for the adaptation of this relational frame with the vertical axis in the aerial apparatus. When revisiting the exercises fundamentals that lead the body to lift, change of spatial level Laban, 1966 and walking, spatial displacement, this same body is led to perceive the internal changes and transformations taking place during the movement itself. Activating neuromuscular connections. This set of non-linear exercises seeks to integrate and connect the body as a whole, including injured or forgotten parts cf. Miranda, 2008. As part of the deep chain that stimulates and keeps movement alive. Notes on the page. One today called the Laban-Bartenieff System. It can be considered an integrated vision between the LMA/Laban movement analysis and the studies developed by Bartenieff, disciple of Rudolf Laban, about body and movement based on the idea of a relational body totally connected in subtle balance. Miranda, 2008, page 27. The effort category was developed predominantly by Rudolf Laban in his book Effort, Economy in Body Movement, in which the author analyzes in detail different rhythms and nuances inherent to every human movement inspired by the European post-war context, where he recognizes them as an energy detached consciously or unconsciously and characterizes them as susceptible of being recognized through four factors: time, space, flow and weight. Laban, 1974. 3. The body category was considerably developed from the studies of Bartenieff and explains that the body organization and patterns of human movement are built based on connective schemes developed throughout our life. In this aspect, the work with the standards of developmental patterning is enlightening for the perception of what they are and how organize the body's most primitive connections. Bartenieff, 1980. End of page. Note: still throughout the first stage of the course, the principle based on the standards of developmental patterning Hackney, 2002 was worked through experiences of these patterns and primitive stages, seeking rememorization and re-identification with each one of them. Recognition of these steps in the body allows their integration into the movement and, in this case, were also addressed as an aspect of connective reference in adaptability, since the body no longer sustains itself primarily by its lower part, but by its upper part. Regarding the work of the Bartenieff fundamentalism to prepare the body, The process was quite transformative. At the beginning of classes, students had difficulty in carrying out the exercises that involved weight sensing, keeping the body with an intentionally active push, for the ease of uniting or activating with muscle contraction and yielding with being relaxed and passive. Alternations often used in aerial acrobatics. This same alternation was identified in the difficulty along the beginning of the I work with the basic 6. The bodies maintain the maximum point of concentration in the low level, and after a while, students started looking around, changing postures and look for recoveries. In this process with the basic 6, the work of phrasing Hackney, 2002 on the ground from the Bartenieff Fundamentalism, which seemed to make the bodies more concentrated and calm, seeking their recovery in the movement itself. Doubts, which began as purely classificatory, with an idea of bringing the movement up to its proper developmental standard, were becoming more integrated and complex, approaching the connections at levels of possibilities other movements for their various forms of execution and perception. Respiratory support for and internal muscle support were incorporated by movement of students and added to personal research, considered the main facilitators of movement, enhancing the activation of muscles from their connections and sequencing and dispensing with excessive local contractions. The work with the basic 6 and the development standards seemed to clarify the intention spatial, connecting the effort of air movement in a more vivid way, which generates a more authentic and present expressiveness. Note on the page: for respiratory support seeks to vivify the body, using breathing as the main resource of belonging and exchange between the external-internal environment, stimulates the perception of emphasis, leadership and energetic chains of movement. As fire needs oxygen, movements of much effort and muscle tone are more easily stimulated from this support and, for this reason, the breathing support was worked punctually and deeply throughout the course, in all phases of body preparation, exploration and maintenance of aerial movements. End of page. Note: article recorded on April 21, 2023 by Sitema Baylor for educational sharing on Alpha Omega Creativa. Aerial body ACROBACY of life. As for the effort category, which was more deeply worked on from half to at the end of the course, some associations were made between the principles allied to a preparation of the body through the Bartenieff Fundamentalism as an activator of perceptions and of the possible variations of the time, weight, space and flow factors. Favoring the integrated expression, effort addresses the inversion of energy in movement from its impulse, voluntary or involuntary. Its application was focused on the knowledge of their dynamics and intensities, encouraging students to discover new possibilities of ground movement and aerial apparatus in relation to the dynamic coordination of the aspects of the body, also facilitating the recognition of their differences and identifications. When looking for other qualities for the movement, the body seems to choose paths less obvious. Page note: 6.5 Internal muscular support emphasizes the use of deep musculature to stabilize and diversify the movement in multiple expressive nuances, releasing the superficial musculature, acting as a minimizer effort and body connectivity optimizer. In this way, a connection is established between the movements of great muscular demand with a greater awareness of the internal support, from the use of the support of the breathing first developed. The greatest methodological difficulty was how to move from using this ground support for the aerial, due to the level of muscle demand required. 6. This concept was elaborated by the architect, dancer, choreographer and movement theorist Rudolf Laban (1879–1958) to refer to the space that surrounds the body and that can be reached by it, without there being a transfer of weight and, consequently, a certain displacement of the same weight. Imaginary space. Wherever the body is or moves, it occupies space and is surrounded by space. We can distinguish between space in general and space within the reach of the body. The latter can be called the kinesphere or personal space. The kinesphere is the sphere around the body whose periphery can be easily achieved by extending the arms without stepping forward from the fulcrum. When standing on one foot, which we can call stance, we never leave our sphere of movement, but we always carry it with us, like an aura. Laban, 1966. Page 10 ***. Our translation to wherever the body stays or moves, it occupies space and is surrounded by it. We must distinguish between space in general and the space within the reach of the body. In order to distinguish the latter from general space, we shall call it personal space or kinesphere. The kinesphere is the sphere around the body whose periphery can be reached by easily extended limbs without taking away from that place which is the point of support when standing on one foot, which we shall call stance. We never, of course, leave our movement sphere but carry it always with us, like an aura. Laban, 1966. Page 10. End of page. Note. From there, it was possible to see how the use and exploitation of efforts coexist with interaction with space. At the same time, it is necessary to reiterate that the focus of this study was to understand such as working with the principles of the Bartenieff fundamentalism and the Labanian themes can complement the investigation of efforts in aerial devices, understanding the complexity of movement as an activator of all its relationships with the world around your return. Article recorded on April 21, 2023 by Sitema Baylor for educational sharing on Alpha Omega Creativa. Aerial body ACROBACY ICs of life. Probably due to body support changes together with the influence of gravity, the weight factor was explored with great adaptive difficulties, however with great discoveries. For this reason, the intersection with the work on rooting on the ground and, later, on the aerial, because it helped in the understanding of these new supports in its interaction with the internal-external space vectors, enlarging the potentialities of the necessary impulses for each movement. The spatial issue appeared as a guide for air movement. However, direct space often appears as necessary to hold the device in a walking in the air, while the indirect seems to be equally pre-established when some expansion movement is performed. In this way, one can say that there was more awareness about the use of the space factor than actually the investigation of this factor in all its possible variants. It is also very important to work on the time factor for aerial acrobatics, due to the fact that it already is the effort of the movement almost pre-established, due to the issue of the impulse necessary for movements with strong dynamics and high level of difficulty, that generally need a specific and precise time so that they can be well executed. The idea of time seemed to be used as a generating sensation of movement virtuous. being slightly conditioned to promote a certain superimposition of the impulse for the times necessary for the formally executed aerial movement. The work from tempo variations in movements executed almost always in a similar was very enlightening for the students and, in a way, perhaps the most explored. Working with the time factor on the ground was essential for understanding the movement in aircraft, because it is very little developed in phrasing terms, including all their nuances. Research exercises of movement on the ground before climbing onto the aerial apparatus were incredibly fruitful. They thus opened ways for perceptions with the other factors, promoting impulses not so formally executed, but complete and diversified. So much so that during the classes, the issue of maintaining an effort and its recovery needs appeared in space displacement exercises same as low and medium levels, out of contact with the aerial apparatus. When it was experienced already with the theme approach action/recovery, Bradley, 2009, awakened the body even more aware of its needs. As for the flow, it was chosen not to emphasize it as a factor, since for a body workflow variations as effort in aerial acrobatics, he has to be very insurance of each movement, because if you are really free, it can be easier to lose the space corporal referential, causing the fall. We chose to work on the idea of flow as fluidity of movement and, also, as a helper of the other factors of effort. Within the little that has been experienced from flow as effort, flow lever has proven to be a strong ally, but extremely dangerous when held for a period of time. Large period of time. Due to the tendency to accelerate movement time in free flow, the body can easily lose control of the air apparatus or its balance. Therefore, the choice to deepen the idea of flow as intrinsic energy to the movement was also due to security reasons. In general, the deepening of the effort category served to highlight how the movement dynamics change when performed with the body located from other spatial parameters. The movement seems to be livelier from the moment when you are more aware of how to put yourself in terms of effort. To at the same time as trying to vary qualities of movement, the body becomes more present with what you are doing, keeping your attention in and out, and let go of what you are doing to pay more attention to how you are doing. Based on these new questions, the students repeatedly commented on the change of body supports and how this directly influenced the force that they should release for each movement, as well as their directions. In the first month, with each developmental pattern that was experienced, a new comment emerged about how the body felt the difference in triggering these forces with the body hanging. More was required of certain joints and regions of the body, pointing to new countertensions and carrying out a whole adaptation of the movement so that a certain connective pattern could actually be experienced. In terms of observation and movement analysis, it was often necessary to experience the movement to understand it. It has even been noticed, in some moments, as a possible resource for comparing the movements performed in the floor and movement references that could be worked on to expand the vocabulary on each device. It was found that, because man has been used to activating his muscle groups with their weight and center of the body in relation to the floor, they also got used to thinking that certain movements were more certain parts of the body, precisely because of there already exists a condition. Look at a terrestrial memory. However, When supported by non-regular surfaces and relatively unusual body parts, these vectors they can change and even become completely inverted. In the first improvisation and creation exercises, an important question was perceived methodological approach that is consistent with the difficulty in investigating devices with the same cognitive rhythm that the body processes when experiencing movements on the floor. The search of the aerobatic movement was perceived as an extremely slow process and tiring, compared to the pace of dance research. For example, sometimes the creation exercises were not finished, requiring continuation in other classes, which ended up generating the temporal structural adaptation of the class. The day when the weather for the aerial work it seemed perfect was when the students stayed almost an hour and socked on your appliances. Lots of pauses and moments of movement rationalization were constantly observed, explaining the need for time for this adaptation internal, not only during the creation exercises. The issue of breaks and a suddenly more thoughtful movement appeared mainly in new vocabularies and indicates a possibly involuntary resource related to the feeling of risk linked to the aerial acrobatics. It is at this point that the issue of risk becomes more than essential for a methodological search for aerial dance, since the limits of the body are present, even when trying to detach the virtuous movement from the aerial vocabulary. For more that is not primarily virtuous, it will still be extraordinary and will need more time to be experienced in a normal way, as it will likely encounter barriers between what was and what will be ordinary, after a minimum of repetition and or custom. The fact that the circus is linked to risk and, consequently, to the extraordinary, has numerous implications in their practices and forms of production. What was proposed intend to present some of them. The extraordinary demanded by the public, in a world of specialization, is something that can become exhausting and sometimes unattainable. Providing limitless adventures can be a risky venture in itself. Aerial acrobatics, as it is performed by a relatively small social group, can be considered extraordinary and of greater motor difficulty for the largest portion of society. For the same reason, aerial acrobats, because they belong to the same society, will want to learn and perform their art accordingly. For that, aerial acrobatics methodologies meet this demand and have, as already said, very similar structures. The exercises are extremely repetitive, trained mechanically until the exhaustion of the body and focus on an external perspective of the movement. Since the objective of the training is to delight the spectator's eyes, the movement sought also has a more relevant visual aspect, approaching its execution by form and forgetting that this same form is acquired through a particular body. When you forget the connection between the external and the internal of the movement, you lose the movement in itself. It is not by chance that aerial acrobats, athletes and circus artists, generally speaking, they are so injured. When working on aerial acrobatics from the Laban/Bartenieff System, the important theme function/expression Bradley, 2009 appeared not as a specific objective, but as a consequence of what seemed necessary to each student and the acrobatic context experienced in this study. There seems to be a considerable demand for finding the expressiveness of the artist-technician acrobats in his virtuous movements, which for him are extremely functional, since it depends on virtuosity to be recognized as such. So how within the expressiveness of the virtuous body there can also be a functionality very important, capable of keeping the body integrated, conscious of its desires and wills. When the three-dimensionality and connective schemes of the body are emphasized, complex coordinations are easily performed, as the muscle chains are triggered in sequences, working together to support movement. The work of an isolated muscle, without the possibilities offered by the three-dimensionality of the body, interferes with its own coordination and execution, overloading the musculature and facilitating the incidence of injuries. Generally, due to the risk and height, the student focuses on the part seen as essential in the execution of the movement, completely forgetting that they are precisely the parts not seen as so essential that they will prevent him from getting hurt and that, even, will give the support really necessary for a full realization of your intention. In the movement of stretching an arm there will be, whether consciously or not, the whole life of the one who executes it. The arm is connected to the shoulder, which is connected to the torso and the whole body. Gestures, being always full of uniqueness, can end up to lock itself up in overly defined and generalized forms and patterns. In that respect, the movement derives from what can be considered ordinary and general, speaking the clear language of social functions. In this generalizing trend of gestures, singularity can be absorbed by the discipline. Therein lies the methodological difficulty encountered and, concomitantly, its own solution. That is, it is in the complexity found in the execution of the forms of movements acrobatics to reside simple solutions to their accomplishments, and it is in simplicity of doing acrobatics that resides its complexity. The difficulty encountered during the proposed course was to find simple ways to perform complex movements and approach the complexity in movements considered simple by the students. However, it is in this simplicity of doing that is the symbolic complexity contained in each movement, acrobatic or not. Here appears the theme linked to the Bartenieff principle used as a methodological pillar. Simplicity/complexity Bradley, 2009. The methodological solution was found from a perspective of working and experiencing any movement as potent and complex in itself. In doing so, one runs another type of risk, the risk of face their own customs and habits in an innovative and original way. The risk need not necessarily be linked to the risk of injury, but also the risk of making the ordinary extraordinary. This can be done by anyone and should be done by aerial acrobats. Instead of always looking for more risks than extraordinary of movement for its form, why not seek the extraordinary within what has already been assumed as ordinary? Complexity lies in openness to change, and change can be extremely risky. Changing implies knowing yourself and the world better and more intensely. By discovering movement from its connecting schemes, personal originality is awakened, as each scheme is unique and manifests itself in a unique way. Spaces enlarged through the connectivity of the body generate creativity. When meeting with himself, he rescues his individuality and expresses himself from it. It's the risk of escaping from oneself, from being original, from questioning and observing oneself and the world. As much as these schemes are a basis and lead principles of movement human being, each person has a path through which he will open himself to the fullness of his body. The body and events influence each other. The environment influences the movement creative if the body remains open to its possibilities, and, to the extent that we integrate, we transform it as much as ourselves. By stepping out of personal experience and sharing experiences through discoveries in class, perceptions became questions that could be raised in this text. Virtuosity and the extraordinary are necessary, but at the same time they were approached in a context of inclusion of the body that performs the acrobatics, with all its particularities. The insertion of the Bartenieff fundamentalism is essential for the practice that includes originality. Bradley, 2009. In doing and also in understanding a stunt air that is less suffering and painful and more effective in terms of effort. Being more integrated with his own body and with his expression in totality, the aerial acrobat will be able, therefore, to perceive it and adapt to its own needs, optimizing the muscle wasting and preventing injuries. This methodological impasse of providing for both needs, functional work and the expressive, is something that still needs to be investigated. It's a path of many branches, and what has been described here is just one of them. The important thing is to know that such crossings generate countless possibilities that not only include the learning relationship, but also creation and performance in aerial acrobatics. Above all, it is from the system Laban/Bartenieff and the look that presents itself to the body and to the movement that this study was made possible, and, as represented by the Mobius tape cf. Miranda, 2008, can always be revived and sensitized by infinite and different perspectives of a same root. Article recorded on April 21, 2023 by Sitema Baylor for educational sharing on Alpha Omega Creativa. Aerial Body ACROBACY of Life. And of reading the article. Forward references. Almeida, Luis Guilherme Vega D. Ritual, Risk and Circus Art, The Man in Limit Situations. Brasilia. Publishers University of Brasilia, 2008. Bartenieff, Irmgard, Louis, Dory. Body movement, coping with the environment. New York: Gordon and Breach Science Publishers, 1980. Bradley, Karen K. Rudolph Laban. New York: Routledge, 2009. Frere, Paul. Pedagogy of Autonomy, Necessary Knowledge for Educational Practice. Sao Paulo: Paz de Terra, 1996. Underscore 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 Education as a Practice of Freedom. Sao Paulo: Paz de Terra, 2003. Goldman, Ellen. The Geometry of Movement, A Study in the Structure of Communication. New York: 2nd edition, 2008. Hackney, Peggy. Making Connections. Total Body Integration Through Bartenieff Fundamentals. New York: Routledge, 2002. Laban, Rudolph. Division of Dynamic Space. Philadelphia: The Former Press, Taylor and Francis Incorporated, 1984. Underscore 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 Effort, Economy in Body Movement. London: McDonnell and Evans Limited, 1974. Miranda, Regina. Body Space, Aspects of a Geophilosophy of the Body in Movement. Rio de Janeiro, 7 Letras, 2008. NACHMANOVIRTCH, Stephen. Be Creative. Trans. Vianna-RJ. Sao Paulo: Sumas, 1993. Vianna, Claus. The Dance. Claus Vianna, in collaboration with Marco Antonio Dioc. Sao Paulo: Sumas, 2005. Short Curriculum Vitae. Julia Franca is CMA, Certified Movement Analyst, Circus Performer, Dancer Contemporary and Educator of the Movement. She is postgraduate in Laban/Bartenieff System by Limericks, Laban/Bartenieff Institute of Movement Studies, New York City/USA, and by the faculty D. Dong Ka Angel Vianna. 2011 graduated in Contemporary Dance from the same university. 2007 and graduated from the National Circus School, Funna. 2010. She passed the Cirque du Soleil audition 2009 and won several awards, such as first place at the Language Exchange Festival 2009, the Tapias Festival 2008, Feminine Revelation Malabar-Rio 2008, among others. Over the past 10 years, she has been applying different aspects of the LMA Laban/Bartenieff movement analysis to a unique dance acrobatic style, combining theoretical and practical research into an expansive possibility of performance creations and specific teaching methodology/learning between choreography, dance theater, circus, video dance, and collaborations interdisciplinary. Aerial body acrobatics of life.